أيضا نرحب بالدكتورة هلا غصن، مسؤولة أبحاث الدواء واللقاح في قسم الصيدلة من جامعة تكساس في الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية، وهي أيضا رئيس جمعية United Voice for Global Impact. رحبوا معي مع الدكتورة هلا غصن.
شكرا جزيلا على الدعوة الكريمة لحضور المؤتمر الدولي للمعرفة والثقافة والعلوم والتكنولوجيا. العلوم والمعرفة والثقافة والتكنولوجيا. أنا هلا غصن، جيت من أمريكا امبارحة. أنا من ولاية هيوستن، تكساس هيوستن، الأصل لبناني، وعملي هو في الأبحاث Clinical Trials Research Pharmacist في جامعة تكساس قسم الصيدلة. مؤخراً اشتغلنا على ثانك يو. خاصة في البانديميك اشتغلنا على الكلينيكال ترايلز للفاكسينز، ومنها موديرنا وفايزر والبوستر ستاديز. اليوم حبيت أحكي أو نحكي عن موضوع كثير مهم بالأبحاث، وهو الأخلاقيات في الممارسات الطبية في مجال الأبحاث. طبعا ك يعني دكتورز أو هيلث كير بروفيشنالز بيعملوا في المجال الصحي أو الطبي، الأخلاقيات بتكون على مجال واسع، ولكن التركيز أكثر اليوم عن الأبحاث والاشخاص اللي هم مهتمين في الابحاث، وخاصه الابحاث تتعلق بالهيومن بينج. في مواضيع معينه لازم يعني نهتم فيها. ابتدي اول شيء ب the prevalence of research misconduct، واللي هو طبعا احصائيات او اكثر معلومات قد ايه في يعني statistics تعطي عن بعض الاشخاص اللي عم بيكون عندهم misconduct او عدم سلوك او عدم الاخلاقيات في الابحاث. Research misconduct continues to be a serious concern for the research community. Determining the frequency of research misconduct and questionable research practices and the full extent of their effects is difficult to do, in part because research misconduct can be difficult to discover. And it's really hard to discover, when there is research misconduct. You basically have to dig more, to know if somebody is doing a misconduct during research. There are data that may shed some light on the magnitude of the problem. For example, the US Office of Research Integrity, ORI, in 2015, the agency found 14 individuals guilty of research misconduct because ORI jurisdiction is limited to United States public health services. So basically there is more, this is just from the ORI because they fund these studies. So they only look at the studies that are funded by their programs. But there's more to that. Actually, for the last few years, the misconduct cannot triple. According to Fang and colleagues, in 2012, conducted a review of almost 2,000 biomedical and life science research articles indexed by PubMed as retracted, and noted that 67.4% of retraction were attributable to misconduct, including fraud, suspected fraud, duplicate publication, and plagiarism. So research misconduct can occur in any field of research, and it is not confined to the US. Actually, it is a global issue. This is not just in US. It can be anywhere where research is happening. Many countries such as Canada and several members of the European Union have developed policies and initiatives to address misconduct. So basically we look at policies, guidance, professional standards, and institutional oversight. Defining research misconduct, the Office of Science and Technology Policy says in the Federal Research Misconduct Policy that research misconduct is defined as fabrication, falsification, and plagiarism. So what is fabrication? Fabrication, making up data or results and recording or reporting them. So basically making up data. And it's not there, they're just making it up. Falsification is manipulating research materials, equipment, or processes, or changing or omitting data or results such that the research is not accurately represented in the research record. And plagiarism is the appropriation of another person's ideas, process, results, or words without giving appropriate credit. So why research misconduct occur? Researchers commit research misconduct. The reasons are often elusive and multifaceted, and sometimes they seem illogical. So it's really hard to find out if somebody is doing research misconduct. Some suggest there is a need to examine the wider research environment, including institutional and systemic structures, and others believe maybe there's political agendas, maybe it's peer pressure, also how media depict the research and research information. Can we look at honest error as a research misconduct? They are not research misconduct. However, there is a fine line between what is research misconduct and what is honest error. Many professional societies have codes of conduct and guidelines that provide context of assessing whether the behaviors could be characterized as honest error or a significant departure from accepted practices of the relevant research community. So it's basically the institutions of the organization can put policies to define or to differentiate if this is like an honest error or is a research misconduct. So how can we mitigate research misconduct? Basically, it's about training, it's about education, it's about putting policies for researchers or for the research team to follow and keep up with this and follow up with this. Also, prevention strategies are essential, such as periodically verifying data collecting during the research and discussing roles and responsibilities before and during projects. Seeking clarification when something seems airy and may also help to avert misconduct. Reporting misconduct. Do we need to report misconduct? Definitely. If you see something done unethically, we are obligated to report it. However, there are people that kind of like are hesitant to report this misconduct because they're afraid of retaliation, and that's why it's very important for institutions and organizations to put policy for retaliation. So whoever want to come and in good faith, because there may be some people do it not in good faith. So if it's in good faith, we should have policy. All institutions and organizations should have policies where they prevent retaliation against these people who report misconduct. I'd like to talk now about a study that happened in between 1932 and 1972, and this study happened in the United States, and it's called the Syphilis Study at Tuskegee, and this is where the ethical principles governing human subjects research, this is where the United States start putting rules for research. So what happened in this study, the study included African male subjects, and these subjects basically have syphilis. However, the researchers did not inform them about their condition, and also they did not give them the treatment when treatment was available. So it was a big issue later on when they found out that this how these subjects were treated, and that's why the United States started putting all these rules and policy against research misconduct. So after deliberation, after so many years, from 72 to 1979, they came up with the Belmont report. And if any of you worked in the research of human subjects, you know about the Belmont report. And the Belmont report talks about three main principles: respect for persons, beneficence, and justice. Respect for persons requires the researchers to treat individuals as self-governing human beings who are capable of making their own decisions and choices. So if an individual decided to be part of a study, they have the right to decide how they wanna be, if they wanna get out of the study, for example, halfway. They have the right to say, I don't wanna continue with this study. So it's the respect of the individual. It's about their autonomy. It's about what they want to decide. The researcher's role is to explain to them how this study is going, and it's up to them to initiate this, start with this study, and also if they want to continue or want to stop the study. Beneficence requires researchers to minimize harms and maximize benefits. So it's about the individuals, it's about the subjects, it's about their well-being. It's very important that harm should be less and benefits should be more. Otherwise, we should not be doing this study or not including the individuals in these studies. So the requirement for the beneficence is to use procedures that increase benefits and decrease harms whenever consistent with sound research design. And the requirement also to make sure the researchers are able to perform the procedure and handle the risks. And the prohibition of research that is without a favorable risk-benefit relationship. And the last one of the, of the Belmont report is justice, which justice requires researchers to treat research subjects fairly and that they design the research studies so that is the burdens and benefits are shared equitably. And the researchers must avoid exploiting vulnerable population. Like, for example, we do studies on prisoners, we do studies on children, we do studies on pregnant women. It's very important because these are vulnerable population. It's very important to make sure this population is not exploited. So the requirement is to select subjects equitably and to avoid exploitation of vulnerable population or population of convenience. So informed consent, what is informed consent is when we need to get the consent from the subjects that they can be part of this study. And the potential research subjects need to be given sufficient information about the nature of the research so they can truly make an informed decision about whether they are willing to participate. The consent process, basically when we talked to the subject about the trial or the clinical trial or the research that we want them to be included in, we need to talk to them about everything about the research. It's not just a one-time sit down, we're doing this study and this is what it is, and if you're interested. We need to explain in their own language. We cannot be speaking also scientific language where they don't understand it, because when you work on the healthcare professional, the regular people may not understand these terms that we use on regular basis. So the issue should be discussed during informed consent process and include the process of the research, its duration, foreseeable risk, and anticipated benefits. So we need to talk to them about everything that include in this research. the measures used to protect privacy and confidentiality, and this is very important also. For them, confidentiality is it's a big part of being in the research. And the informed consent should not merely be a single event or just involving signing a form. Rather, it should be an interactive educational process that takes place between the researchers and the potential subject to ensure the subject's adequate comprehension of the research. So included among the basic elements of the consent process are full closure of the nature of the research of the subjects and of the subject's participation, the subject's voluntary choice about whether to participate, and if they decided to participate, and let's say the study takes about a year or 2 years, so if they decided to participate and halfway of the study they decided that they don't want to be part of the study, this is their right. We cannot force them. We cannot do anything to, make them obligated to finish the study. If they want to get out of the study, this is their right to do that. The subject's voluntary choice about whether to participate, and if the collection of identifiable private information or identifiable biospecimen will take place, whether the identifiers may be removed and the data used for the future research with or without additional consent. So we need to tell them if there's a data collected and the study is done and this data can be used later on in the future, we need to let them know that this data can be used in the future. Good clinical practices. This came when in early 1990, representatives from European Union, Japan, and United States came together to form the International Conference, or now it's called International Council or Harmonization. In 2015, the formation of the ICH led to the creation of standardized guidelines for clinical research of investigational drugs. Basically, these are guidelines, and I'm going to go quickly over those because there's a lot of these guidelines. But the main thing is standardization has provided the most efficient use of resources in the development of new drugs while establishing standards for quality, safety, efficacy, and reduction of redundant testing. So what was happening before, when we do studies or clinical trials, studies usually done in different sites, and some of them are done, for example, if it's American study done in the United States and done also outside the United States in other countries, Japan, England, Italy, Brazil. So every time they do these studies outside the United States, they have to start all over. So that's why they came up with all these standards to make it basically unified. You don't have to start studies all over again to, because it was costly and it's time consuming. So, to start everything from scratch. So they came up with the good clinical practices. And the guideline for good clinical practices was approved by the ICH Steering Committee comprised of members from the 6 ICH founding regulatory and industry members. From European Union, Japan, United States, industry representative from European Federation of Pharmaceuticals, Japan Pharmaceuticals, and other countries. So I highlighted the main thing, but basically these are the standards that we need to follow. The principles of the ICH presented in E6, which is, before initiating trial, foreseeable risk should only occur if the anticipated benefits justify the risk. So it's all about benefits. And I'm not saying trials and clinical trials do not have risk. Everything has risk, but the benefits has to outweigh the risk. The rights, and I like this one, the rights, safety, and well-being of the trial subjects are the most important consideration should prevail over interests of science and society. This is very powerful. If you ask me, it's about the individual themselves. So even if we know this is gonna benefit, this trial or this study or this research gonna benefit society, even if it's gonna benefit science, number one that we need to look for is the individual. So it is about their well-being. It's about the individual, and if they decide they don't want to continue with the study, they have the right to do that. So here, science and society, the benefits for science and society stops. Clinical trials should be scientifically sound and described in a clear, detailed protocols. The medical care given to and the medical decision made on behalf of subjects should always be responsibility of a qualified physician, of course, trained, qualified physician and research team. Every individual involved in conducting trials should be qualified by education, training, and experiences. I'm a research pharmacist, so I work on a clinical trial, so I'm part of a research team. Before I start on any study, when it's assigned to us, we have to go through training. Actually, we have to go through three different trainings. We have to be trained on the good clinical practices, the ethical practices of research, and then we have to go train on the institutional education and training, and we have to be trained on each study. So I cannot touch, even if I'm trained on all this, I cannot touch a study. If I'm working on a study for Pfizer, and I have another study, for example, Johnson & Johnson, I cannot touch Johnson & Johnson if I don't have the training for that specific study. I can only work on the study that I'm trained at, then this is their sponsor, because they don't allow anybody, even if you are trained research pharmacist or trained healthcare professional, you cannot touch this study unless you are trained. So education and training is very important. All clinical trials information should be recorded, handled, and stored in a way that allows its accuracy, reporting, interpretation, and verification. This principle applies to all records, paper and electronic. The confidentiality of records that could identify subjects should be protected, respecting the privacy and confidentiality rules in accordance with the applicable regulatory requirements. This is very important. In the United States, we have HIPAA. I'm sure in every country they have something similar, where to protect the health information of the individual. Investigational products should be manufactured, handled, and stored in accordance with applicable good manufacturing practices. They should be used in accordance with the approved protocols. And also, after they decide, for example, FDA in the United States approved these medications. So now, after they approve it, they have to make sure they are manufactured according to good clinical practices. When does the ICH E6, which is the Good Clinical Practice Guideline, applies? It's widely recognized as international standard for conducting clinical research, and the ICH basic principles can be applied to all research, including human beings. So this is not just a subject. This is not just in the United States. This is everywhere. These good clinical practices should be followed everywhere when you do research for human subjects. HIPAA, which is basically, it is confidentiality for subjects or for patients, where all identifiable health information should be protected. I'm not sure about other countries, but I can say in the United States, like for example, if I am working in a hospital, and my husband has a surgery in the hospital, and he comes to me later on and tells me, oh, can you check for me, can you go to my chart and check for me if, XYZ. I cannot do that. I cannot go and check for information. And he is a family member. I cannot go for my son or for my cousin and check information for them without their consent. So it's that there's this strict when it comes to confidentiality. If my daughter wanna call the doctor, if I wanna call for her, to schedule an appointment and give him information they're not going to accept it because, especially if she's above 18, they're not going to accept it because I'm interfering with the confidentiality of the patient, so I'm not allowed to do that, even if it's a family member. And this is what we talk about when we say HIPAA. It is, you have to get a consent before you give any information. Otherwise, it's going to be against the law. So I have two more. I'm going to be quick. Authorship is, this is also part of the ethical guidelines that we need to follow. Authorship is, of course, when we do research, we have to write the research. We want to make sure when we write it, we avoid plagiarism. Plagiarism is like when we take information from other people and we don't cite them. So avoiding improper practices, researchers should always take care to work responsibly, and this care should extend through the writing process, since improper practices may lead to research misconduct, which is fabrication, falsification, and plagiarism. Current research builds upon previously published work, and citing previous authors is as important as acknowledging collaborators. In general, it is considered plagiarism to use the words, ideas, images, computer code, and any other work that was created by another individual. And we all, I mean, we all in the academic field, so we know that. So a good rule to follow is always to cite resources, especially nowadays we are in the technology age and the AI age. And we go to ChatGPT and get all the information that we need. So even with that, we want to make sure whatever information we have, if it has a resource, we need to cite it. Inappropriate use of others' work is not the only form of plagiarism. Often scholarly papers built on an author's own previously published work, resulting in repetition of the same material, such as background or method sections. But what if authors want to reuse words they originally wrote for another publication? I want to ask a question. I really didn't know about that. If you write your research and a few years later you come and you want to take some information from the research you wrote, is this considered plagiarism? Does anyone know? Yes, 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 it is. It is called self-plagiarism, where you have to cite your own work. Using one's own writing without citing the previously published source is often inappropriate. The term commonly used is self-plagiarism, and generally defined as using one's own previous writing in a new work without attribution. And there's a reason for that, why they say it's a self-plagiarism. Many publishers consider it to be a kind of plagiarism, and it has been called a form of poor scholarly etiquette by ECAS 2010. It is important to consider the expectation of the readers and publishers, who may assume that the work they are reading has not been published before. And self-plagiarism may also constitute a copyright violation, since publishers typically own the copyright to works that they publish. So it's very important also to cite our own work. I'm talking about like later if we want to use few of these words or information. And my last topic that I need to talk about, and I'll be quick. I took a lot of information because I don't want to take too long, you know. So this is the best I could have done.
You have 5 minutes.
5 minutes? Okay, I can do that. I can do that. Yes. Okay. Investigator roles and responsibilities. So if you are working on a clinical trial, and you are the principal investigator. So basically you are responsible for the trial itself. The investigator and the research team of the research study has a critical role in the protection of the research subjects and the integrity of the data collected. It is therefore imperative that the investigator and the research team have a thorough understanding of and training of applicable regulations, legislation, and institutional policies pertaining to clinical research and good clinical practices. So the investigator is the person basically responsible for the whole study. We call him PI, principal investigator. And under the PI, they have a research team. So each research team member has a role, and they are responsible for their roles. However, the whole clinical trial is the responsibility of the principal investigator. So if I make a mistake, yes, it is my responsibility, because I'm the one like making the mistake, but also the principal investigator is responsible for everything with this study. And they also can have also sub-investigator. The investigator is responsible for the overall conduct of the study at the site. This includes protecting the rights and welfare of human research subjects and ensuring the validity and integrity of the data collected for the study. And the sponsor of the study is the individual, company, institution, or organization which takes responsibility for initiation, management, and financing of the clinical trial. So investigation must meet all applicable regulatory good clinical practices, institutional review board, independent ethics committee, and they must demonstrate that he or she has the education, training, experience to conduct the study. Evidence of qualification can be demonstrated through documents such as up-to-date CVs, individual training logs, training attendance, meeting minutes, etc. And they must demonstrate they are aware of the good clinical practices. Also, they are required to be familiar with the protocol, investigator brochure, and the use of the investigation product as applicable. Not only is it important for the investigator to be qualified by training, education, and experience, the investigator must also ensure that all study team members that are delegated study-related tasks are properly qualified and competent and trained. The delegation log should be document who is involved, their qualification when they are involved, and the task should be delegated only after the training has taken place, and the date of training should be included. There should be evidence of training of all these tasks.
We want to the community, yeah. Want to listen to them.
Thank you so much. I'm not sure if we can open questions, or if you have any questions, I'm always available to ask.
First question for the community.
Oh, okay.
Good morning. Thank you very much for your presentation. It's very, very interesting and critical issue you presented now. It's about the medical ethics, particularly medical research ethics. And you come across a very important, the principles of the medical ethics, from the beneficence, justice, confidentiality, and you come across through the good clinical practice, which is a very important step to do clinical research. And I can see that you have a very long experience in this field, and we are very glad to have you today and learn a lot from you.
Thank you.
I may not have questions to you. I'm sure you have, you are aware about that, but it's to open discussion with the audience. When we come across, at this modern time, come across the confidentiality, it's important to add on the security, especially the cyber security, because all our data, all the information are available on systems, on models, on different computers, so this can be accessible by some people. So the cyber security nowadays is added to the confidentiality to achieve that. Maybe we can add on more for the informed consent, which is very important to do any clinical research. We have to do informed consent. Is the participant has the right to withdraw from the research at any time.
Correct.
That's very important to be. This is their right. This is a justice to them. So that would be important topic. In the clinical trials, I'm sure you're aware about that. There are multiple phases. So one day we're gonna reach to the final stage when we have randomized clinical trials. So randomization is an important topic to be discussed whenever we do clinical trial. Because we have randomization, we can have blinding also, it is very important.
Yes.
Otherwise, people will not continue or disagree to continue. So I can see you come across all the ethical approvals, and then you come across the publication, the authorship, plagiarism. It's a true, all the process to achieve the medical ethics are very important. I can see that your presentation was very important. I don't have a real questions for you, but I can see that you have a long experience in that. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I just want to say something quickly, if you allow me 2 minutes. Going back to the cybersecurity, this is very important in this day and age because there's a lot of breaches. So definitely this is not something like falls on me or you. This is, if you're working on an institution, it's an institutional policy that need to be implemented. And because yes, there are breaches. And I like to say something with research, when I do clinical trials, the sponsors are very strict who can access their trials. They do not allow anybody unless their names is on the trial. Also, the clinical trials, most of the studies that we do are randomized and placebo, blinded, unblinded. So, and this kind of gives importance to the study. So yes, there are, this is basically a summary. What I just discussed is a summary. There are more to this, but I try to bring the most important things about it. And it's very important if any of you work in research, and I'm sure you know that, but it is very important to do everything under ethical conditions because this is affecting people at the end of the day, And we also want to make sure they keep trust in research, because if people lose trust in research, people are not going to do research. And one last thing, recently the United States added a category which is called the MENA category, which is the Middle Eastern.
المفروض يكون أنا عندي جدول.
I'm sorry, quickly. Added the MENA, which is the Middle Eastern, and the North African, to be added and as a category, so we can do the studies and include this category with them. Thank you so much.